Tom Campbell here. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. The links are in the description below. Thank you and enjoy the video.
Well, good afternoon, Tom, and thank you for being here for My Big Toe question and answer. We sometimes get emails of questions. In addition to our fireside chat and our fireside chat addendum, we sometimes get emails, and now we're looking at some interesting questions coming through as comments from YouTube. So we will be going through those and see whether there's a question that you might find interesting. And we found one just not too long ago from Ethan. And Ethan says there seems to be a conflict between these two statements. The intent behind the choice or action is what matters for the individual's evolution, not the choice or action itself. And then the other statement, there is a low entropy choice, implying the choice itself is important, not the intent behind it. You can make a high entropy choice or action even if you truly had a low entropy intent behind it, but perhaps your action was miscalculated. How do these two work together?
Okay. The problem that Ethan is having is in his second statement that says there is a low entropy choice, and then he says implying that the choice itself is important, not the intent behind it. And of course, there is no such implication. Just because there is a low entropy choice doesn't mean that the intent behind it is not important. Intent and choice are obviously correlated rather strongly. You have an intent, and because of that intent, you make choices. You see, so the choice is often a reflection of the intent. So if you have it is true that morality is connected to the intent, not the action. And that's because morality is well, let me put it this way, reality is not attributed to the action because actions can come from all sorts of different intents. As you recall, I usually give a little example of that. If somebody is walking behind a person in front of them and they see a $20 bill fall out of their pocket, if that person immediately says, "Oh, wait, excuse me, this just dropped out of your pocket," and gives it back because that's what they do, they are a low entropy kind of person, a high quality person, then that intention was good. It was good to give the money back, and the action was good, which they gave the money back. Now, if that person, they walk behind them and they see that $20 bill, their first intention is, "Oh, look at that, $20. I could use $20. Oh, but look, there's people around and they might see me. And if they saw me just take it, then they know that I was stealing that guy's money. And I'm not sure, there could be people here that know me, so I better give it back." So then he says, "Excuse me, this bill dropped out of your pocket," and they give it back. Now the action was the same. In both cases, the action was to stop the person and give them the money back. But in one case, it was just obviously that person wanted to give it back. That was their first reaction. That was their intention. The other one would have liked to have stolen it if they thought they could get away with it. And if there was nobody else around, they might have just waited for that person to walk on by, and they would have walked up, maybe put their foot on top of that $20 bill and stood there for a while until that person had walked further ahead and then pick it up, put it in their pockets, you see. But they were afraid of being caught. So they took a better action than they had intent. So it's possible for an action to have multiple intents. in general, a person's actions tend to follow their intents. If your intent is to take advantage of whatever you can take advantage of, then that's what your action will do most of the time, except maybe when you're afraid of getting caught, you see. So it's not that, that there is such thing as a low entropy choice. And it's a matter of just the usage of words. We make choices. And the low entropy choice is the choice where your intention is to make a choice that is low entropy. So you see, those two are connected to each other. It's not that implying the choice itself is important, that the intent behind it is not. No, that's not the case. Intention and choice typically go together, but they don't have to. So what happens is true that sometimes you can make your best low entropy choice because your intention is good. Your intention is to do the right thing. And you decide that this is the right thing. And so you do it. And then you find out later that, there was unintended consequences that you just didn't think about. And it turned out not to be a good thing. Okay. Well, in that case, you learn from that. Okay, I missed these unintended consequences. I won't miss them next time. I'll be aware that those are like that, and you learn from it. Okay, well, then this is how we all learn. We make our best choices with our best intentions. We don't really have good and bad intentions. Intentions are just what we are. Our intention just flows out of the core of us. It's a being level intent is what I'm talking about here, not an intellectual intent. I'm talking about who you are. What is your intention at the deep level? And that's a major difference, because you could say something like, well, my intention is for the good of humanity. I think the human race would be so much better if we just got rid of everybody that has blue hair and blonde hair and blue eyes. That the human race would do so much better. So, all right, that's genocide, but it's a good genocide because it's going to make the human race better. That is not a good intent. That's a very terrible high entropy intent that somebody is pretending is good because they want to think that way. They're trying to justify a very low quality choice, you see. That's not what I'm talking about. That would be an intellectual intent. Those are intents you make up to make yourself feel more in line with your beliefs. So I'm talking about what's the core intent? Well, the core intent behind somebody that wants to get rid of a lot of other people is coming from arrogance. It's coming from negativity. It's coming from fear. It's not a good intent. No matter what they say to justify it, it's a bad intent, you see. So, yes, you can mix and match things like that. And it's possible that you could have a bad intention. Oh, I really want to rip that person off. And you rip them off, and it turns out that by ripping them off, they have a wonderful day and something great happens to them. And it was all because you ripped them off, and it might be a real low entropy thing would happen, you see, but you don't get credit for that. The only thing that's important was your intention to rip them off. Whether it turned out good or bad isn't the issue. The issue is your intention was poor, you get a negative. Your quality of consciousness slips a little because of a bad choice. And if you make the best choice you can, and it turns out not to have been the best choice that was possible, you learn from it. And you don't get a decrement because it didn't turn out well, because you've learned something from it. But now let's say you don't learn anything from it, and you make that same bad choice again, and you don't learn anything, and you make it again, and you don't learn anything, and so on, which a lot of people are like that. They just keep making the same old bad choices over and over again. Now you do get a decrement for that because you're making bad choices and you're not learning from them. You're not progressing. You're not taking that opportunity to grow up. You're just making bad choices. And when you make bad choices, you de-evolve. So that's the difference. You see, otherwise, if you could only take an action after you were certain that it was going to end up in the long term to be a low entropy action, you'd never take any action, because you can never be certain about how things are going to end up in the long term. You can't take in every possibility, into account. So we take our best guess. We do, with a good intent, make the action we think is the best action. And if it turns out not to be, and we learn, that's good. Now we've taken that mistake and learned from it, not to do it again. So that's good. We're on the path to growing up, you see. And as long as you're on the path to growing up, then, you're doing all right. It's when you're not growing up and you're on the path to de-evolving that there's a problem. So the answer to his question is a choice and an intent are very highly correlated. Most people, except when they're acting, those two go together. Your choices are informed by your intentions. But sometimes those two don't go together. And when they don't, you don't get credit for growing up. You don't grow up because something turned out all right by accident. It's that intention that you had that's important, is how you grow up or don't grow up. Because we can't guarantee what our actions are going to actually reap long term. Too many variables there to know. So it's the growth comes from the intention. You meant well, you did your best, and that's a growing thing. Okay, you get a positive for that, even if it doesn't turn out too well. But if you don't learn from it, now you might get a decrement for that and be back to where you started, because you don't learn anything and you're going to keep doing it over and over again. So you see, so that Ethan is hopefully an answer that sets you straight. There's really no conflict between those two statements.
All right, thank you very much. That was interesting. I have another question as well from one of our emails. And this is concerning intuitive communications or non-physical communications. In future generations, or even in present ones, students of MBT, that's my big toe, might wish to make contact with your IUOC and or one or more of your NPMR friends, that's non-physical matter reality friends. Under what circumstances would you advise these students to do so or not do so?
That started out in the future. How far in the future?
Oh, it says in future generations is the
future generations. Okay,
statement.
So he's talking a pretty long time in the future.
I guess so.
Future generations, after I'm dead and gone. Future, I think, is what he's implying then. So after I'm gone, people may want to get in touch with me or some of my non-physical friends. Yes, that may work out just fine. And if they do that, what they would do is they would get, let's say they wanted to get in touch with me. They would have an intention to go interact with me. And if they wanted to ask questions, rather than just say, hi, how are you? What's up? If they wanted to actually had questions that they wanted to ask, then they could ask those questions, and they would either get data right out of the database to answer them, or if it was required that the answer had a free will component to it, they would get the larger consciousness system answering in a way that was supported or in consonance with the data in the database. So the LCS would be actually, using its free will, but it would confine itself just to what Tom Campbell would have said or thought or done, according to the database. So that's what you would get, one of those. And if you wanted to talk to some of my friends, like maybe the Big Cheese or somebody, you say, oh, let's have that conversation, then you can have that intent. And if you have that intent, it works exactly the same way. So whether I'm here or not here really is irrelevant. If you wanted to do that today or yesterday, it would be the same process. The fact of whether I'm alive and walking around on this planet or not is irrelevant to the process. All of that is available already. Now, you'd have to get that information and you'd have to be detached from it. Otherwise, you'd color it with your own beliefs, your own understanding, your own fears, your own ego, your own knowledge, your own experience. Everything that is you is what you're going to use to interpret the data you get. So if you want to go talk to me, then you make that connection, you'll get data from a data stream, and you have to interpret it. Now, if you wanted, while I'm here in this particular avatar, Tom Campbell's playing this avatar that looks like me, then, or my consciousness is playing Tom Campbell, then you could do a consciousness to consciousness connection. You wouldn't have to look at the database, though you could. The database is still available to talk with me that way. But if you wanted to talk directly, then you could just send that message to me. And my consciousness, if it wanted to make a reply, would send something back to you. You would have to interpret it. If you have fear and ego, that fear and ego will color your interpretation. So, and when I say you need to be detached, what I really mean is you need to be detached from your ego, detached from your fear. You have to not let that get in the way of your interpretation.
Now, this is very interesting to me because I know you've spoken about this communicating or tapping into the database of a character, of an avatar. And the way you have stated it actually solves how mediums contact deceased persons. All right. If they're a very good medium, they are detached. And the interesting phrase you used was, if you want the free will component of this avatar, the LCS will play that part. This is how, and it explains how when mediums get information, it is real time, present time, based on what the person would do, but there's a free will component to it, which gives it that present ability, that present answer that they're asking. This is just the way you stated it. It occurred to me that this explains very well very good psychic mediums who say, but that person was there. This is real. This person is describing something that happened yesterday, but he is deceased for 20 years. Well, they're communicating with the LCS. That is the free will component that allows them to get the answers based on the information of that avatar, but in real time. That is really, really fascinating.
Yeah. Oh, I've been saying that all along. I didn't
You have.
know.
You have. But
It
the
just
light
clicked,
bulb
huh?
went off.
Yeah, it just clicked.
I'm sure a lot of people understood it, and I understood it, in a way. It's just that particular way you stated it, giving it a free will component.
Yeah. Yeah,
playing,
'cause
the LCS would play it.
right, right. Sometimes they're talking to dead Uncle Fred, and Uncle Fred, it doesn't happen a whole lot of the time, but occasionally, and Uncle Fred will say something like, oh, by the way, that was a really good idea, getting, your daughter Susie a new bicycle. Real good idea. And they just got her the bicycle like yesterday, like you say. So this is dead Uncle Fred, obviously has some awareness about what's going on there. Well, that's not coming out of Uncle Fred's database. That's coming from the LCS. And why would the LCS do that? Doesn't it have something better to do than, to pretend it's a dead person? Well, no, what the LCS does, it's the same thing it always does, and that is it tries to help people grow up. Its point is that's why it created this virtual reality, to help us grow up. That's why synchronicities work. The system is pinging us to help us grow up. That's what it does. And when mediums talk to dead people for a client, the person that's being helped there isn't the dead person. The person that's being helped there is the client. It's the client that has some kind of closure issue or something that they can't let rest with dead Uncle Fred. There's something about their connection with Uncle Fred that is still open for them, is still a worry, is still a problem. And that's what the larger conscious system is trying to do. It's trying to help the client, not the dead person. And telling that person things that let them let go of fears or beliefs or stresses or things that they have, then helps them grow up. And maybe hearing it from your dead uncle is the only way that you can get that. There may be, that's the pathway. So the system takes whatever pathways are presented to it to help people grow up. So if you go to a good medium who's really knows what they're doing and is good at this, then that opens up a space for the LCS to say something or to tell you something that'd be helpful to your growth. If you don't, then it may need some other synchronicity. You may, walk into a bookstore and your attention is immediately fastened on some book hanging off a shelf. And that turns out to be the very knowledge that you need. That's called synchronicity. So the system works in all kinds of ways, but it's not exceptional for the system to help people who need the help to grow up.
That's really good. Every once in a while there's a certain phrase. Yeah, people say, you answer questions differently all the time. You give different phrases and something resonates with someone.
Mm-hmm.
And I've understood this concept and how it works, but no, that was a good one. Okay. The next question. Now I don't know about. Okay, so he's asking, is it okay to make these contacts, and could you give us unique addresses for some of these NPMR beings and tell us about their personalities and those special areas of knowledge or insight? Is that possible to give someone an address?
I have already given them all the address they need. All you need is some unique way to identify an entity, a consciousness. If you can uniquely identify it, then that's the address, whatever that route may take. So if you want to talk to the big cheese, then your intent would be, I'd like to talk to that entity that Tom called the big cheese. Okay, that's unique. There's only one entity that I've given that name to, and so that's how you do that. So you already have an address. When we do healing, we don't heal, a name, a particular person, their address, a piece of their hair. You don't need all that. All you need to know is we're going to heal Mr. X, as long as there's somebody who knows who Mr. X is. So let's say that candidate for healing Mr. X was was given by Susie Q. Susie Q says, I have this sick friend, Mr. X, and I'd like you to heal him. Then the address is, we'll heal Mr. X, the person that Susie Q, wants healing, or we're going to heal the person that Susie Q has called Mr. X. And that is a unique address because there's only one Mr. X that Susie Q wants healing, like in this healing session. You might want to say that too, in case Susie Q is trying to heal 5 different people and calling them all Mr. X. Then there would be some confusion, but that's not something that's going to happen very often. That's kind of a strange thing. So it would be, that I'm going to heal that person who Susie Q has called Mr. X in this healing session. Now, unique address. There's only one person that fits. And Susie Q knows who it is. You don't have to know who it is because that address is unique. So if I have mentioned it at all, then that is a unique address. So you already have them. Just go look them up and use that, and it'll work just fine. But now, if you decide to talk to, to Big Cheese or to me or somebody like that, they may or may not want to talk to you. And that's true of anybody. If you want to talk to, anyone, conscious to consciousness communication, people can set intentions about who they want to talk to. So if you get nothing comes back, that may be that you just didn't have your mind in the right state, or it may be that the person wasn't willing to talk with you or connect with you. So you can't force people to connect with you. Free will says they can always say no, that they don't want to. Now, people who have very little understanding of the nature of reality, they're generally pretty open to everything and anybody because they don't know that they can say no. So you find that most people are very open to communicating with them, unless you try to use them or abuse them or take advantage of them or manipulate them, and then they'll feel that and they'll turn you off.
Yeah, I think this is an important point to make, and it's something I wish everyone knew, is that things coming in to their consciousness, you have to be able to distinguish whether this is you or not. I think perhaps people can be very confused or frightened by that. You have to know that you can filter these things, that they are not necessarily you. Would you agree with that?
Well, there's 2 things there, 2 separate things. One, yes, you can filter these things. Again, your free will can set constraints on the information that you get. That is something that many empaths, people who are extremely empathic, often don't know. If you know someone who is extremely empathic, you'll find that they have a lot of trouble going to a place that's just very busy, a very busy market, or walking into a Sam's Club on a Saturday, when there's hundreds of people in there. It's just too much because they start picking up the thoughts and attitudes and feelings of all these people, and they kind of have to get out of there because they find it overwhelming, particularly if people are upset or angry or have a lot of emotional things going on. Then it gets to be a problem. And even among just their friends, if some of their friends are upset and angry, they may have to stay away from that friend for a while because they pick all that up and they don't want all that negative stuff. Well, they can turn that off. They just need to have an intention not to connect to that. The reason they have it turned on is because by nature, if you're an empath, you do want to connect to everybody. See, that's what empath means. You want to connect. You care about everybody. Everybody is meaningful to you. You care about them, and because you care about them, you want to connect to them. So here you are, a very caring person. You care about everyone. You have love for people in general. That's very nice, but that can be overwhelming if you don't understand that you can limit the nature of that communication. And it's not just an on-off switch. It's not that it's a 0 or a 1. I either listen or I don't. You can have all sorts of logical, barriers there. Well, I only want to talk to people under these conditions. And I want to talk to them, certain people under those conditions, maybe different conditions. And you can set up all sorts of conditions. It's not just yes or no, talk or not talk. So your intent can set conditions that your consciousness will follow. But if you're an empath, you have to give up the idea that you're connected to everybody. You have to say, sometimes I don't want to be connected to everybody. I only want to be connected to the people that I intend to be connected to. And then you can do this. But as long as at a deeper level in your little empathic heart, you have this intention to be connected to everybody because you care about everybody, you want to be connected to them all, then it's going to be really hard for you to set constraints. So you have to realize that caring about everybody is not the same as being connected to everybody. You can still care about everybody very deeply, but you don't have to be connected to everybody very deeply. You see, so that's the thing. So that's one idea. But now the idea of knowing whether it's you or not is a separate thing. And that is if you get a communication, and many people will say, oh, did I just really get that communication, or did I just make that up? Is it me? Is it my imagination, or is it coming from outside of me? Well, that's something that you will never be certain about. You can't be certain because there's no tags about where the data comes from. Data can come from you, from some other IUOC, or from the system. And there's no tags on it, so there's no way to know for sure. And when I say for sure, 100%, probability of 1, there's no way to know for sure where the data is coming from. That's why you should always, be careful and be open-minded, but also be skeptical, because you don't know exactly where the data is coming from. But with practice, you can pretty much know. You can generally know. And sometimes know more with some information than others, some that you communicate with regularly, just like you know their voice. When you hear their voice, you know the way they are, and you know that's them. So it works just like that. So then you are maybe 99.9% sure that that is that person talking to you, because you can feel them. On the other hand, it could be the larger consciousness system communicating with you using their voice and their data in the database, because there's something important for you to learn, and getting this through your friend would be just the perfect way to get it. So in that case, it might not be who you think it is, you see, but 99.9% of the time, it will be just who you think it is. So that's what I mean. With practice, you get to know whether it's from you or not from you. It has a different feel, and every source has its own feel. So you'll know when it's the system or another IUOC. They have different feels, but the system itself can duplicate any feel. So you won't always, you'll never be certain, but you can be mostly sure most of the time.
And well, if it's coming from the system, the information will be positive. Also, how helpful is the information? Weigh it, that sort of thing.
If it's
a high entropy information, it's probably coming from
yourself.
Yeah.
Probably coming from yourself.
Yeah, probably coming from yourself, or someone
not getting along with you.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of those two things. But yes, if it comes from the system, it is providing you opportunity for growth. But that doesn't mean that it's happy news. Sometimes we provide people opportunities from growth by, slapping them to get their attention, or by, telling them something that forces them to act in a particular way. So just because the system is sending you information doesn't mean that it's going to end up in smiles and happiness and, little birds sitting on your finger and music in the background and all of that. It might be something harsh. It might be something even that's not true, but it will be for your own benefit and an opportunity to learn and to grow up. Tom Campbell here. I and MBT Events hope you liked this video. We now have well over 1,000 hours of free video on this user-friendly, ad-free YouTube channel. Though these videos are free to our viewers, they represent many thousands of hours in production and editing, and many thousands of dollars invested in video and audio equipment, along with the required computers and software to store and process the raw video into finished products. So far, all of this content has been funded directly out of our own pockets. Be assured, we will always continue to do what we can. It's our life, our purpose, a labor of love that we will continue to pursue as best we can. However, those pockets are not as deep as they used to be. Thus, we are now seeking to augment our resources with support from our viewers. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our newly created Patreon account or through a one-time donation. The links are in the description below. Thank you.